Good evening. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Please note that the opinions voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network nor our sponsors. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Hello. Welcome to Paranormal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Join paranormal historian and ufologist Kevin Melick and psychic demonologist Jennifer Sampson as they navigate us through the different categories of the unknown and the unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, cryptids and monsters, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, metaphysics, forbidden archaeology, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, crimes, and corruption, with top analysis from the experts of these disciplines. If it's amazing, unusual, or mysterious, if it's bizarre, creepy, and fantastic, if it's unbelievable, paranormal, or supernatural, it's here on Paraversal Universe. Here are your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. Whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, welcome to Paraversal Universe, brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited at the Northwoods Paranormal Resource Center here in Rylander, Wisconsin. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malick. Paraversal Universe is brought to you by the voice of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson, over at WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We are also heard on WCET 101.7 FM out of Columbia, South Carolina, High Point Radio 100.5 FM and 1620 AM out of New Jersey, and the Rift Radio Network based out of Lakeside, Virginia. Welcome one and all. And hello to everyone in the chat room. We look forward to your questions and comments as always. The archive for the show will be available as well. Show archives from over the years can be found in various places on the web, including our archives like page on Facebook called Paraversal Universe Show Archives. Also check out our guest promo page, Paraversal Universe Radio, for what's upcoming in the near future. We hope everyone is doing well, as always. We have a fantastic show coming up concerning the unknown and unexplained with theologian Christopher Sampson. But first, as always, let's do our shout-outs. Shout-outs go to those people who shared our show banners this week. We always appreciate it greatly and thank you kindly. Who do we have?
This week we have Walt Christos, Thoughts of Christos, Katrina Cooper, Dennis Koch, Jason Bland, Paranormal Soup, Jamie Demelos, JJ Paranormal, Metaphysical Bounce, Howie Odell from the Orion Effect, Kat Hobson at WBHM, Lawrence DeMisa, Jean Broida, Lisa Reynaga, The Rift, Sudan, Lori Kreslaw, Dr. Chuck Kennedy, Project PSI Institute, Ty Ward, Fate Magazine Radio, Jack Brokish, Paranormal Daily News, and Dr. Joseph Burks.
Thank you, everybody. Kat, if you could mute your microphone, we can hear the typing.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we're good.
Okay.
Right, we're good.
Okay. So today's guest is theologian Christopher Sampson. We met Chris back when he was a regular contributor on the Real Deal show Demonology Today. We were invited on for a two-part alien abduction roundtable special during that period. Chris was also on that panel, and that's how we met, and we've been friends ever since. So during this broadcast, we're going to be discussing a lot of things relative to the unknown and unexplained. I think at some point we'll probably touch on all of the different topics or most of them. Shall we bring him out?
Yes, let's bring him on.
Christopher, are you with us?
I am here.
Welcome to Paraversal Universe.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Well, no problem. My pleasure.
Yes, we're honored you can join us. We didn't read a bio on you to everyone. That's no biggie, really, because we usually ask our first-time guests to tell us how they got into prospective fields anyhow. In your case, that would be theology and the Catholic Church. In other words, spirituality. So let's start with that.
Okay. A lot of it stems from, I always tell people that my first memory of life is of a beautiful stained glass window in the church that I was baptized in Phoenix, Arizona. And I always kind of took that in my own way, that the hand of the divine would be always with me. And so faith was an important natural part of my growing up. It wasn't anything foreign. It wasn't anything I had to just develop into. It was like as natural as, okay, this is getting up in the morning or eating or the need to, relax or whatever. Faith and belief in spirit was just a part of it. And as I got older, I claimed that more and more for myself. In fact, to the point when in high school, I seriously began to just direct my steps towards seminary, toward seeing myself as a faith leader, especially, in the Catholic community as a priest. And that's what I naturally just kind of started gearing myself towards, assuming that was going to be my life. Since then, of course, I've learned that God draws straight with crooked lines. And there's been some surprises along the way. But overall, regardless of the different directions my life has taken, I can always go back to my center, which I know is there. I don't have to necessarily feel it. I don't necessarily have to just reason that it's there. Like I said, it's just been a natural thing that is there, and I don't question it.
And it seems very natural for you. We think you're an amazing theologian, by the way.
Yes, we do.
Oh, well, thank you.
We know you're also good friends with the renowned Franciscan demonologist Ken Deal, R.I.P.
Yeah.
And I know you attended the funeral last week. We heard it was beautiful.
It was a very beautiful send-off. We met in the church, and there was a special. Since Ken and his wife belonged to a special segment of the church, a special group known as the Secular Franciscans, that group had a special little prayer before the actual funeral, and then the funeral itself, and then everyone then proceeded to the cemetery and had a final sending off, as it were. And the beautiful thing to me, I've been at many funerals, counseled people that have just lost people, at the deathbeds, but the underlying sense of joy, of assurance that God was in control, that death was not the final answer for the very beingness of Ken, but it was just a transition. And that was not only manifest by his wonderful wife, but also by the wonderful children as well.
You know, metaphorically, it reminds me of the Star Wars movie where Obi-Wan Kenobi, in essence, decides not to fight anymore. I mean, I understand that wasn't Ken's case, but just the fact that once he did leave this plane, then his spirit and soul became stronger and became more of an asset overall for the Force, or in this case, the greater good. And I feel like Ken was such an amazing person. We're going to miss him so much.
Yeah, very much. But he's up there still doing his work.
That's the thing. And, I have no doubt that...
he's a warrior of God.
Yeah, and he'll continue to be.
Exactly.
So, and I bring that up because, of course, you were a regular correspondent on Demonology Today there for a while. And we love them episodes, by the way. One of those episodes... Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I don't even think I've told you guys that at one point I had checked out the particular Franciscan group myself, and that's how Ken and I crossed paths. And I just happened to, it was one of those moments that you think, hey, the universe kind of timed this, that in passing for just a split second, I happened to see him have I think it was a brochure he was putting away, and it said demonology. And I was like, I asked him, I said, do you kind of, study that, or do you help people with that? And then the conversation started, and that's how we actually got to know each other.
That's really cool.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And of course, anyone he brings on his show, I have respect for, because he wouldn't just bring anybody on his show, let alone to be a regular. So one of those episodes, and how we met you, was one of those episodes that we had the pleasure of participating in with you, was concerning the thoughts on the alien demonic connection.
Exactly.
And so I know we'll be discussing that too coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And since we will be, I guess the first question I would ask is, what are your thoughts in general on that? The alien, any connections?
About the angel demonic connection?
Well, if that, I guess it would depend on definition, right? Some people feel aliens are angels or demons.
Right. I was thinking that, throughout different cultures, you've got the Mesopotamians, the Sumerians that would depict, these beings that would act as pretty much these messengers, as it were. I tend to look at it as I define things a little bit differently. I say that there's strict angels and angel, which are the spirits, which are the pure angels. Then I say there's angelic beings, which could be physical, organic, ones that would exhibit the same traits, but are not necessarily strictly in the sense of what we would say is pure angel. And in that, I would almost classify the aliens in that sense. Now, I look at, I of course, any of us, we can look up and look up at the night sky when it's clear, see all these stars. And when I was little, I would look up, and I remember having different discussions with my parents, and the discussions would kind of go like this. Wow, you see all of that up there. And can you believe that some people think that we are the only ones in this whole entire universe? Really? Yeah, I can't look at that and think that, and not believe that there's other creations that we don't have no idea about that are out there populating this whole universe. And when I got older, even in the seminary, I would have discussions and say, why couldn't? I was always one of those that would ask one of those questions that people would like roll their eyes like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's asking that. But I would ask, why couldn't that be? You know, we say that God has created the universe, and we find that in so many different religious texts throughout the world. Why couldn't that be? Well, you know, we define that, and, you know, there's no evidence that, and it's not in, you know, in the Bible. And I would argue, being a language geek and a Hebrew geek, I'd say, well, actually in the Hebrew it does allude to different things.
Right.
Oh, well, you know, that's kind of crazy, and they'd push me off on something else, like, oh, someone quiet Christopher, please.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And as you know, I was just talking about that earlier today, about the idea that, because we were discussing on the alien demonic connection.
Mm-hmm.
Who was I discussing with? A guy named David. Anyways, so we're talking about it, and he says, you know, I think as far as the abductions and stuff, that's demonic, and that this alien stuff that's out there is demonic. And I said, well, we know a percentage of it is negative, and certainly demonic. We know that for sure. I said, but to me, the idea that there may be other life out there in the universe totally does not go against the Bible, in the sense that if God created the heavens and earth and universe and everything, then surely, you know what I'm saying? There would be other things out there. If you do the math, I mean, if nobody wants to believe theology, then just do the math. You know, simple math doesn't lie. The odds are in favor of there being other life forms out there, and stuff that we can't even probably wrap our heads around even.
Exactly. And I think that, you know, if in theology we talk about a third of the angels rebelled against God and fell, then if we're talking about some kind of spiritual influence, such as, you know, we may be influenced by angels to do a good deed. Well, if we're being influenced by spiritual forces, why can't these other physical, organic beings throughout the universe be influenced by that as well, if indeed there is one unifying creator, one divine spirit? Well, then it would go to reason then that, yes, some of these other beings, what we call extraterrestrials / aliens, could also be influenced by you know, beings of light and beings of spirits of darkness, and which would be why some of these abduction cases are, you know, exhibit demonic traits to me, you know.
Right.
But kind of going what you said, Kevin, is that I would agree with that too, is that, you know, we can do the math and look, and it would seem to point, say, yes, there's other things out there. But also I would add to that these abductions, who are we to classify that? That would be almost like I don't know, a koala bear trying to make a judgment on scientists that are making tests on it to try to save its life. I mean, it's so, you know, they would be so removed and so different from us. Maybe they have a beneficial purpose, that they have a plan for us, and here we are like, well, that's that's all evil. How do we know? How can we make that judgment?
Well, I think we are due.
It is time for our first commercial break. You are listening to Paraversal Universe. We'll be right back with our guests for the next segment.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome!
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy. I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back from our first commercial break, everyone. This is Paraversal Universe, produced by WBHM Digital Broadcasting, also heard on WCET-FM, High Point Radio, and the Rift Radio Network. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malik, and we'd like to take a minute to thank everybody who makes Paraversal Universe possible, including graphic art director Lawrence D. Miza, music theme by Matt Stenz, announcer Frank Lee, producer and owner at WBHM Kat Hobson, also to Howie Odell and Lisa Renaga and the Rift family, and to Michael Vera at WCET-FM. Thank you all for carrying our content and working together on our behalf and the behalf of our audience everywhere. And of course, a huge thank you to God in heaven, whose strength beyond strength is stronger than all, for granting us this wonderful show and opportunity here to be with you all.
Amen.
In appreciation to all those various platforms we are on, including iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Twitch, YouTube, Dailymotion, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Blog Talk, Podbean, Google Play, Mixcloud, and Paranormal Livestream app, which is streamed and restreamed from various other outlets all over the world via the internet. And this segment of Paraversal Universe is brought to you by the UFO Wisconsin Research Team, Wisconsin's alternative to MUFON. Alrighty, back to the show. This is Paraversal Universe, and we are speaking with theologian Christopher Sampson. Are you still with us, Chris?
Yes, I am here.
Alrighty. So when we left, we were discussing the possibilities, or basically different thoughts on the alien demonic connection. And it seems, looking at the data, last week we had Dr. Joseph Birx on, and he presented some data from the Free Foundation. And that has to do with, they did a survey, and they asked contactees, various questions. And what they found, at least in this particular survey from this group, and there are other studies and other groups and organizations doing research on this, but what they found was that more people had positive or claimed that their experiences were positive than negative. However, there was still a percentage of cases that were negative and thus unwanted, experiences. And, I tend to believe that, and I believe, like, you had brought up before, angels, and then like I don't know, angel hybrid, but like the demigods, where they're like the sons of God mated with the dog. Yeah, exactly, Nephilim, and then of course you got their spirits, right? After they died, are they haunting people? And some people say they're demonic, and they say no, they're technically not demonic. But I tend to think that with all the odds out there in space and all the different races that could be, and we know just from human history that there have been hundreds of different kinds of beings reported in different crafts, in different situations. We could have multiple parties, or multiple collectives abducting people. Some may be more scientific, others may, and I think that there is that percentage that are masquerading, but I liked what you said about the alien, other alien races out there having their own theologies, because of course, if we're spiritual beings, in a physical existence, if they're sentient and they're created in God's image, a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, whatever, they would also be that, or even if they're not the head, 2 arms, 2 legs. If we have beliefs, good, and I think good and evil permeates all across the universe. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I really like what in reading the different hypotheses, that Zachariah Sitchin had put forth when he was alive.
Right.
One of the things that I really like how he put it, I believe it was in his book called The Divine Encounters, in that he words it almost like if we looked out onto the universe and pondered who made us and our creator, then why couldn't they have looked out also on the universe and come up with their own stories and inspirations about where they came from? And then as we originated at, on Earth, and they had a hand in helping our development, then why couldn't we have learned parts of those and added our own thoughts about it? So it's kind of, I almost hate to use the word term, but kind of a developing mythology in a sense. And that I don't mean necessarily false. I mean it like, in ancient Greek, mythos was just a sacred story. So, this developing sacred story that didn't quite just originate with us, we kind of inherited it and then added our own deepening understanding.
Right. And along with along with some demons masquerading as aliens, I also believe, because we said, there would be, like our race, for instance, we have different theologies just within our race. Anyone else doing abducting or having contact experiences with people, as far as the negative ones go, I would say either they are masquerading or them particular beings are in league with demonic forces. Because, we tell people anytime if something comes into your house, your sanctuary, your domicile, and finds you sleeping in your most vulnerable state in bed, and then does something to you which is not asked for or wanted or justified, then a greater good, loving light beings just don't do that kind of stuff, know. And so in that case, it's like, well, what about aliens in general? Does that mean, like, let's say if Alien X, if they are abducting people, are they all evil? Well, I don't think that any one species is all good or all bad. And I say that because we see that in other animals besides humans. There are dogs and cats, and even they did a study on bears. That guy that was eaten by bears. Yeah. He did a couple of years study, and he found them to have all, he got to know these wild bears so well, and they had different personality traits. And of course, the one that ate him was the bully bear, right? The one that the whole time he'd been documenting is causing problems with the other bears and whatnot. But yeah, so if we see that in animals across the board, then you figure, well, that's got to be that way. So the aliens or whoever's doing the abducting would depend in part on their social structure and basically their politics, the government they serve, because the government could be ordering them to do these abductions no different than we order our army to go out and do different things.
No, I would agree. And I think a lot of it tends to be on perspective. I understand that some of the abductees, it is a frightening experience, like you said, when we're at our most vulnerable state. And I've had instances, during sleep being woken up by demonic things. But I think part of it depends on perspective too, kind of like I said, here they may be going about on orders doing something that is beneficial, but yet we would define it as intrusive and harsh, and especially when they don't quite communicate why they're doing this, and we have to make up our own kind of explanation for it for some reason. And I think I think this way because of my line of work as a substance abuse counselor, and the different things that I had to go through seminary training was, as human beings, we tend to slide towards the negative, that the cup is half empty, and it's more easy to talk about the darkness rather than light. So I think when it comes to alien abductions, we tend to go more towards that. Now, I'm not negating that some of them are not negative or demonic in appearance, but I'm talking about other cases. These could be alien Joe, maybe totally innocent, following orders on something that could, be beneficial, and you're like, what? Who do they think they're, what do they think they're doing? I didn't ask for them to do that, and we get all in a huff. But that's how I would view that, kind of how we view those types of things.
And you see that we do it to animals here on the planet, where we put them in cages, and and we consider humans. Well, I don't know. We like to think that humans are good people, although there's a lot of evil out there too. But you know what I'm saying. The average person, you like to think, is generally a good person. Hopefully, they're good people that may do bad things once in a while instead of bad people that are doing good things once in a while. But for sure, now I know that you've had some personal experiences concerning the contact phenomenon.
Right.
And of course, we discussed this before the show, and you had sent us some photos, and I thought that as we go along, if you would share some of those experiences with us, we can, and then we can go through the pictures. I know that people can't see them out there in the radio land over the airwaves and the internet, but we can still explain what's on them and also understand what's going on.
Right.
So I guess the first question would be, how did your experiences start?
They started early on when I got into my teens, and it was rather abrupt. Suddenly, within about a year, 2 year span, was quite a vivid set of dreams that, those images just have remained in my head for about 30 years now. Colors and things seen and emotions during those times. It was just rather unexpected. Of course, I'd always been a big sci-fi fan, but nothing had ever had, perhaps I should say, prepared me for things like that. And then all of a sudden there it was. And I was having to, in my teenage mind, making sense of kind of what was going on, shall I say.
Right. So when these started happening, did you tell your parents? Did you talk to anybody about it?
I may have kind of broached the subject with my mom. My mom was kind of, my dad was always working, so mom was the main point of contact in the house, and she was very open-minded and would always just kind of encourage along those lines as far as trying to stay open, and so yeah, I would kind of do that, but then most of the time it was just me thinking and kind of running those images over in my mind on my own, and just kind of seeing if my mind could kind of put those pieces together and see where they would fall. And I found that when I did kind of input, the little input I got from her, and then also from what my own mind was doing in my own way, I found where a number of them would just kind of fall into place. And I was seeing some connections between a few of them. And then it started kind of not becoming something random. It was like, oh, well, maybe this has some kind of purpose behind it.
So one of the pictures we have is a map that you drawn, and on the map, it's looking down, of course, like most maps do, and it shows the neighborhood, your house, the house you grew up in, and the subsequent like area around it. It's not really a neighborhood though, in the sense that in the drawing it just shows your house and the land, right? So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 or 4 spots were marked on the map, and then there was a 5th one we discussed. It happened in the backyard. Can we go through these in order and talk about each one?
Sure.
We have 2 minutes until the next commercial break, so we could start with the first of them, I guess.
The first one is joy.
Okay.
Is the first one?
Yes, that would open up the others.
Okay. Well, why don't we start with that?
Okay. And that was probably around 14, and that was a sense of exultation of walking out on this sunny morning and just seeing these 2 people standing there, not quite smiling, but exuding kind of a sense of happiness. And I was just remember this feeling of just like expectation, like, oh, they're here, you know. And I just remember they were in white and kind of had a shine about them, as it were, and which is why I named it Joy, because of just the overwhelming joy at the moment.
Yes. So the picture, for those listening, shows Christopher looking out of a picture window at 2 alien beings, but they're I think Nordic. If for those people out there listening that know what Nordic aliens may look like, they're basically human.
Right.
They look so human they could pass as human. Blonde hair, blue eyes, almost that Legolas elvish kind of look, you know.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings elves kind of thing, but yeah, and them are one of the main, I guess, collective types. Oh, break time.
Okay, and with that, it is time for our next commercial break. You're listening to Paraversal Universal. We'll be right back with our guests for the next segment.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back from our second commercial break. This is Paraversal Universe on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET-FM, High Point Radio, and the Rift Radio Network. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malik. Before we get back to the show, we want to tell you all that we are on MeWe as Paraversal Universe. If you're on Twitter, you can find us as the NWPS, and that stands for Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society. Our like and group pages on Facebook are under various headings as well. And having said that, check out our society's like page on Facebook called the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited, as well as Jennifer's like page, Jennifer Malik, Psychic Demonologist. Leave a like if you like what you see. We always appreciate it. And there are some Facebook group pages we want you to check out. The Ultimate Conspiracies group page is one. That's dedicated to conspiracies, crimes, and corruption. And also check out Lake Monstrosities, dedicated to aquatic mysteries and wonders. Feel free to join them both. We would love to see you there. Each network mentioned has a group and like page on Facebook as well. So check those out for upcoming content. This segment is brought to you in part by the Breezer Files on YouTube. You can have the Breezer paranormal investigators who are also members of the NWPS. And also the book Trail of the Sasquatch, A Shaman's Journey by cryptozoologist and Iroquois shaman Don Young, who's also a member of the NWPS. So check those out. Any comments for this week's show can be addressed in the live chat room. Let's get back to the show. This is Paraversal Universe, and we are speaking with theologian Christopher Sampson. Are you still with us, Chris?
Yes, I'm here.
All righty. So when we left off, we were discussing, in the last segment, we had just started discussing some experiences you had regarding alien contact. And so the first picture, we have several pictures here for those just joining us.
Right.
These were drawn by Christopher, and he sent these to us before the show. So we had point of reference. And so the first one, of course, showed Christopher on a porch.
Yes.
Looking at two Nordic beings.
Yes.
And the picture is entitled Joy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. And then, so the second picture is... Is that it? The one with the basketball court? Would that be correct?
Well, the second one the dream would connect with Joy, and that is the one with the hand pointing to the holes.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Here
okay.
it is. Here
Okay.
it is. Here it is.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okie doke. So that's picture 2. All right. So let's talk about this a little bit. Can you explain this for everyone?
Yes. So in this second dream, the only thing that has stood out for me over the years is that there's the end of a hand, and the person is wearing white, and they're pointing to a section of ground which would be to the north of our house that I grew up in. And this particular section was in a clearing that was separated by a little section of woods from our house. And I remembered that the whole notion of what I was supposed to be looking at was important for me to recall. Now, the why was not given, and it was not really spoken, but there was no doubt that I was to recall this. Now, the actual conscious waking event that happened several months after this dream was that my brothers and I were out helping my father one fall in that particular clearing, and as we were clearing, as we were removing downed branches and things like that, as I moved one section, there on that particular piece of ground was three holes, and the holes were about, I'd say maybe 2 inches in diameter. There were 3 of them about 6-7 inches apart, and around the edges of each, it was all blackened. And curious, I was like, well, what is this? So I found a stick, and I put it down the holes, and each of the 3 holes, all, even though they were about 6 to 7 inches apart, all 3 of them aligned, shall I say, to the center of, I guess, what would be the pyramid shape of what it was making. And so I found that kind of curious. But then it hit me. It was almost like a ton of bricks that this was my dream. This is what I was supposed to remember. And suddenly, as I looked at that, the image came back of the hand from the dream pointing. And that's what that particular image is.
That's amazing.
That is.
And part of what's amazing about that is that there was some physical evidence.
Right.
Which doesn't always happen in these kind of cases. And it's also very intriguing too, as to, as far as, because from what you're describing, that is not something that you just naturally find out in the woods. I mean,
right.
Something made those for a purpose, and if them holes only go down so far, and they don't have, usually if an animal's going to dig a hole, there's a reason for it. It's going to go somewhere. It's going to do something.
Right.
Not just go in a little bit and stop. So, which means there is some physicality to this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, opposed
and the soil, let's say the blackened. I remember I reached down and I kind of touched it, and it stayed on your fingers, and it spread around like when you touch soot or charcoal. It just stayed on, so I knew that it was not. It was different. It was burnt, yeah, in a way.
Too bad you didn't grab any ground samples and stuff.
I know, right? I've been kicking myself for the past 30 years about that.
Hey, things happen for a reason. Maybe if you would have had like every reporter at your door. You know what I'm saying? It would have changed your world forever. Right?
Mm.
Who knows? But or who knows what else at your door? Saying, "Whoa!"
Right.
Also, men in black are at your door, right? Knock on wood.
Yeah. Don't put that out there.
Okay, let's see. So the next pitch. Okay, so why don't we move on to the next one? Which one which one should we look at next?
I believe that's the basketball one.
That one is called Coming Back.
Right, Coming Back. That was another dream. Looking east, it was a dusk, so the sun was beginning to set. It was turning that rosy purplish in the east, and I remember this. It's kind of strange to remember. I remember that it was almost time for dinner, And I was outside, kind of near that clearing, but I don't remember what I was doing outdoors, but I remember looking east, and there was the glowing sphere, and once again that feeling of, oh my gosh, they've come back, and that expectation of something good. I was, in all of these that I've had, I've never had a sense of dread or like something bad is going to happen. It's always been brought with it a sense of amazement and kind of a happiness. And so that's what that one is. It didn't move. It just hung in the air. And I just remember how I felt looking at it in the distance.
Very amazing. Then, let's see. Okay. And then we have what? 1, 2. Aside from the map, we have, it looks like 3 more. So which one would be the next one then?
That one would be the one in the clearing with the waving thing in the ship.
Yeah, lights.
Right. That was actually a few dreams put together, but when I put them together, they were all like one. In the first instance, it was once again out in that clearing, clear night sky, stars out, looking directly up. I remember staying there, surprised I wasn't getting dizzy looking straight up in the air, but looking up, there was the black, dark jet black, circular shape, and the wonderful, brilliant blue, like specks of light that would move kind of in a maze pattern on the underside. And so we go from that to it is down ground level. There's a row of windows, and in my 14-year-old mind, 15-year-old mind, I thought, hey, I'm gonna wave at this thing that's standing behind the row of windows in this thing. So I raised my hand and I waved. And I remember that it waved back, and how excited I was. I was like, oh my gosh, I made it respond. And then we jump from that to where suddenly it turns into a cross of blue, brilliant blue light, and it shoots straight up into the air.
Wow. There's a couple things about this photo this drawing, I'm sorry, that really strikes me. One is, so for people listening, the photo shows Christopher waving to a craft, and it's an oval craft, and it's got windows in it, and there's a being, and he's waving back. And then part of the picture shows, and then it's like it shows the blue cross, like it's like there's actually a 3-segment drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that struck me was I've seen people draw the identical craft with the windows, just like what you've drawn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, I've seen this before. Not me personally, like in the sky, but I've seen other UFO witnesses. I've seen drawings like this. And the second thing was the blue, because I told you when we were talking before, I haven't told the audience, but we can wait. I guess it's commercial time.
Yes. Why don't we take our next commercial break? You are listening to Paraversal Universe. We'll be right back with our guests for the next segment.
2 nights, 2 debates. Which one will get watched? I'm Jane Metzler, Fox News. A DNC drawing today divided the candidates into 2 groups of 10. Not all of them can take the stage with the Democrats' current frontrunner, but they certainly wanted to.
The first night's group includes Senators Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, and Amy Klobuchar, former Congressman Beto O'Rourke and John Delaney, current members of Congress Tulsi Gabbard and Tim Ryan, plus former HUD Secretary Julian Castro, Washington Governor Jay Inslee, and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Fox's Jared Halpern.
The second night features frontrunners Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders and South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, along with Senators Kamala Harris and Kirsten Gillibrand and Michael Bennett, author Marianne Williamson, entrepreneur Andrew Yang, Congressman Eric Swalwell, and former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper.
One of those Democrats, President Trump's likely opponent in 2020. This morning on Fox and Friends, the president clarified remarks he made to ABC's George Stephanopoulos that if a foreign government gave him information about a political rival, he'd look at it, but might not contact law enforcement.
First of all, I don't think anybody would present me with anything bad because they know how much I love this country.
He added,
and of course you have to look at it, because if you don't look at it, you're not going to know if it's bad. How are you going to know if it's bad? But of course you give it to the FBI or report it to the Attorney General or somebody like that.
The president blamed Iran for Thursday's attacks on 2 oil tankers near the Strait of Hormuz. Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan saying a short time ago,
we have an international situation there in the Middle East. It's not a U.S. situation, and the focus for myself and Ambassador Bolton and Secretary Pompeo is to build international consensus to this international problem.
This is Fox News.
At TD Ameritrade, they're reinventing how you invest. Whether you want to place a trade on Facebook Messenger or get market news from your smart speaker, TD Ameritrade's technology is designed to bring the market to you. See what's new at tdameritrade.com/innovation. Member SIPC.
Fox News Channel.
His 19-year-old mother was murdered on April 23rd when he was cut from her wound with a butcher knife. In grave condition ever since, that baby boy died today in a Chicago hospital. Frank Avila, an attorney for the family.
The baby is no longer suffering. The baby was murdered. I should say that. The baby was murdered, and we demand justice. The baby did die of natural causes, of course, but natural causes that were inflicted to him, the brain injury from the asphyxiation that was caused by the murder of his mother.
A 46-year-old woman who claimed she'd given birth to the baby boy was arrested after she took him to the hospital, and tests determined she was not his mother. The woman's 24-year-old daughter also facing first-degree murder charges. The State Department confirms that another American tourist found dead in the Dominican Republic.
Latest death is Layla Cox, 53 years old, a medical technician from Staten Island, New York. She came to the Dominican Republic to celebrate her 53rd birthday on Sunday, but on Monday she was found dead in her resort here on the island. We spoke to her son in Knoxville, Tennessee a short time ago. He said he begged his mother not to come here. He was worried about what could happen with the dying tourists, that number up to 7 now. He said now he is being pressured to have an autopsy and then to have the body embalmed or cremated immediately. He says if he doesn't do that, they will declare her a Jane Doe. That's what they're telling him. He also said he's tried to get a toxicology report done, but he's been told that the toxicology machine is broken.
Fox's Steve Harrigan in Santo Domingo. At least some of the victims reportedly consumed drinks from the minibar. 2 semis collided on an Indiana freeway this morning. No one hurt, but the crash made a mess. Crews had to clean up cocoa and lithium batteries all over the interstate. Some of those batteries leaked, sparking small fires. And on Wall Street, the Dow closing down 17. I'm Jane Metzler, Fox News.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Paraversal Universe. Now in our second hour, produced by WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We are also heard on the Rift Radio Network out of Virginia, WCET-FM out of South Carolina, and High Point Radio out of the top of New Jersey. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malik, coming to you from northern Wisconsin, in the USA here at the Northwoods Paranormal Resource Center in Rhinelander. You can always enjoy excellent fringe talk radio for awesome and informative radio shows about the paranormal, supernatural, esoteric, and Fortean topics on this network and affiliate platform websites. Not only our show, but many other good shows about different facets of the unknown and unexplained. Much to listen to and much to enjoy. Stream live on TuneIn, iTunes, or the Paranormal Livestream app, available from Android app in the iTunes Store. This segment is brought to you by the Supernatural Magazine, where our articles can be read. This is Paraversal Universe, and we are speaking with Theologian Christopher Sampson. Christopher, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. For those just tuning in, we are discussing, at the moment, we're discussing contact, alien contact, with theologian Christopher Sampson, who has had a couple experiences that he's kind enough to share with us. And so, where did we leave?
We left off with the sketch entitled Lights.
Oh, right. And the other thing I was going to say was I tell people that about my 3 major UFO experiences, but I've had a couple minor ones too. And all the minor ones mean is that they were like far away. Where I to give you an example, one night I looked out up in the sky and I seen this blue star. It was the size of a star. It was just a little bit brighter than a star, but it had this amazing blue color to it. And I know the skies pretty well, and I know that there's not a star where that was. And then obviously the blue. I remember just standing there looking at it, thinking it was so amazing. And as I'm sitting there looking at it, it shot off. And as it shot off, it left one of them trails like you see on Star Trek, where it goes into warp drive and the spaceship shoots off, and then a couple seconds later, the trail follows it. It did one of them, and it was gone, and that was that. But I'll never forget how brilliant blue that was, and the trail was blue too. So when Chris was telling us about his experience, and he noted this amazing blue brilliance, I thought, wow, and it struck my memory of that minor experience. Because I've spent a lot of time skywatching, and if you spend enough time skywatching, you're going to see stuff out there that you can't explain.
Right, you'll see stuff that you can explain that's from us, and then you'll see stuff that's not.
Exactly. So,
the next one we have is Exam.
Exam. The picture is called Exam, and for those in radio world, what it shows is the close-up of a gray, and in the background you see a doorway with a Nordic standing in it, and you can also see what appears to be a surgeon's light, or like a light you'd see at like a dentist office. When you sit in the dentist chair and they have the lights that you can move around, something like that. So can you tell us a little bit about this picture?
Yeah. In this particular dream, and it's kind of odd, even now talking about it, as far as it wasn't the gray that was necessarily the prominent one. It was the Nordic in the back. And that's what drew my attention, not this weird gray being standing there, but there was almost a sense of, how do I want to describe it? Almost like the Nordic was there to kind of make sure everything was proceeding properly, and almost like kind of that I was kind of in his care, in a way. And once again, there was no feeling of fear or like, oh my gosh. I do have to wonder, though, because I mentioned it to you guys, but I wonder now if that's possibly where the scoop mark on my shin came from. Because I've had it, I don't even know how old I was when I got it, but in thinking about it just now, I wonder if maybe that was what was going on. And speaking about it now, like I said, it was, even though the gray was there, it was the Nordic, like I said, some sense of connection, some sense of kind of being in that in kind of the Nordic's charge, kind of a protectiveness in a way.
We hear that in ufology, that many times, that the Greys are sometimes portrayed as the underlings for other alien races, almost as they're the servants, or they're doing their work.
Right, or they have something that's kind of like AI about them.
And that's the other thing, is that it's been speculated by many a ufologist, because of different things they've heard in stories, that these beings, the Greys, may be like part AI, or there's some artificial quality to them. Of course, we don't know this for sure. This is speculation, but it is the talk, right? And not just in goofy pop culture Reddit forums, but also in scientific, academic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of academic professionals that have looked at this phenomenon, and submitted papers, written books about it, done regressions with people. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that this phenomenon is real, or isn't. I mean, this is a very real thing.
The next one was the layout.
Yes. I was going to say one more thing about the last picture, and just that when you were talking about how the Nordic was watching the Grey, or just kind of watching the situation, it reminded me of Travis Walton, about his experience. He tells that that seeing the Greys bugged him out, and to calm him down, the at one point when he was in the ship, the Greys left the room and the Nordics came in. Just their human presence was enough to calm him down a little bit, because he's just taking this in for the first time. What they suggest happened was that, well, of course, he got close to the UFO, and he got close to the UFO, and some kind of energy beam shot out, and it hurt him. So they brought him aboard so they can heal him, and that this healing process took a few days before they let him go. That's one of the speculated theories about that. And there's also other cases where you'll have like the Greys, and then you'll have like the mantis, the insect.
Yeah.
That's another one that will kind of oversee things, or the tall Grey opposed to the little short Greys. And it's interesting that there is definitely something going on with that. What exactly, I guess, is ultimately anyone's guess or belief, but there's just too much to discount. So the next picture is the map itself. And so we discussed the joy.
Right, it's basically where all the encounters took place on the land.
Yes, coming back, remember, and the lights. But there was a fifth one also, right? Behind the house? Or in the backyard?
Right, that was behind the house. Once again, evening, clear sky. It was, I remember in the dream that it was very specific. It was summer, and the sky was that rosy purple, and over the house, because I had to go walk out in the yard and take care of our pets, but something made me turn around, and over our house was this cloud. I mean, enormous cloud. I knew something was in because there was a light, like glowing from it, and it was just hovered over the house. And in a way, and I didn't tell you this the other night, but in a way, I remember almost like that it was not unwelcome, but that it was unexpected. Almost like, I wasn't expecting them now, kind of thing. But that was the other. That was one of the other dreams. Was of that, and that's just where it ended. Of me looking up at this lighted cloud above our house.
A couple times you brought up purple in the sky.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's funny because the banner that Lawrence made for you this week showed it had purple. It was purple clouds, and it had kind of a very beautiful, like,
it's a sunset, the different color hues, right?
A very.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I would say, I'd seen that. I thought, wow, that was kind of neat.
Yeah, out of all the pictures, he could have picked that one. It was just like, so that was cool. That was cool. Okay. So, have you ever considered regression at all? As far as like hypnotic regression, or just I mean, do you need more details? Are you content with where you're at with it? I'm just,
I wondered about it. Of course, I'd never pursued it only because, and it sounds funny, but I think I'm have enough of a stubborn streak that I'm like, well, maybe my brain just wouldn't let it happen. But I think on most of me is content. There's a part of me like, what else is there? Then I think, no, I'm okay with what I have seen, what I do know, and what I remember. And, the different sightings that I've had, as an adult in my waking times has just kind of reinforced that. And when I do have, I still continue to have some dreams of, kind of like I did when I was a kid, but nothing, it's odd. Those dreams that I've been describing and those things that I've described, I can say, okay, this is kind of like a chronological sequence. I can put those things together. I can kind of say, okay, I kind of know what's happening here. The few dreams that I've had as an adult, outside of the waking sightings, but as an adult, I'm like, it's very random. I have no idea what any of that has to do, and I don't think it necessarily has to do with me. So I think for the moment, I think I'm good. I'm not, maybe the day will come when I'm like, I have to know more, try to find out. But I think, I don't know, there's a nagging underlying voice, shall I say, that kind of, I don't know, it comes out and says, I'll know when I need to. And I'm okay with that.
Okay, everybody, and with that, it is time for our next commercial break. You're listening to Paraversal Universe. We will be right back with our guest for the next segment.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. But let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in the inexplicable world around us, and we're talking about them here, looking for answers on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back from our commercial break. This is Paraversal Universe, produced by WBHM Digital Broadcasting. We're also heard on WCET-FM and the Rift Radio Network. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malik. Before we get back to the show, let's take a quick moment during this hour to specifically mention the radio call dials for the AM/FM terrestrial radio stations who carry a Paraversal Universe, including WCET, which is located on 101.7 FM out of Columbia, South Carolina, and on High Point Radio, which can be found on 100.5 FM and 1620 AM out of New Jersey, which broadcasts in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So hello to all of you who are tuning in over the airwaves. Thank you so much. We're glad you are with us. This segment is brought to you by the Parasociology like page on Facebook. Parasociology is the study of how paranormal manifestations and experiences can affect a family, group, or collective. Parasociology also examines how spirituality is practiced in different cultures. So go check that out if you get a chance, and leave a like for future content. And back to the show. This is Paraversal Universe, and we are speaking with Theologian Christopher Sampson. Chris, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So, yes. So I I jot things down. And I jotted a couple things down here. And one of the things I jotted down has to do with the last piece of paper we have. You are a linguist. You are good. You excel at that. Some people who have had visitations from what we call aliens can come up with languages or sequences or numbers or there's different examples. Right. And one of the things that was sent was the
symbols.
The symbols. Some of the linguistics that you've done on that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that? I would assume. Well, I would assume that is part of this. Correct. I mean.
Right. You know that the kind of the whole thing with the alphabet is kind of been one of those nagging things I can't quite pinpoint where it even came from, other than when I was even real little of messing around with these shapes and lines and dots and curves and trying to decipher, trying to figure out how do they flow together. Now, you know, I've delved into different languages and stuff, but this specifically, I mean, it can be adapted for whatever, but I'm just simply writing English with this particular alphabet, but it's important for me to try to convey to everyone that a large part of this, it had to, and let me just kind of back up a second. Different reasons why I kept tinkering with it as I grew up was there were different things that I couldn't define, but I knew there were certain rules to this. And one of those was that it had to feel right. There were certain things with feeling. And in looking at like the drawings and the dreams and the different things like that, feeling is a major part of it, the different emotions that it pulls out. And in this alphabet, this way of writing was very important. Not only feeling, but also how the characters connected in relationship to each other. One shape doesn't necessarily, one particular way of writing it can change where it is in relation to the word. And it's how the form it is in now is closer to how I feel it is right. I'm not to say that maybe something I'll get a nag and, you know, kind of toy around with it a little bit. But as it stands now, I believe right now that probably is the final form. And when I am kind of writing, which I don't do all the time, but when I am, it's usually a spiritual concept. Suddenly I'll look at it and I'm like, oh, that's kind of like it's a deep thought. Where does that come from? Oh, okay. Something that I might ponder, maybe a concept. And in the actual act of writing it, it kind of is soothing and it makes me feel good, which is kind of odd, but it just does.
Well, you know, it's I think it's fascinating. The other thing one of the things I think is fascinating also is, one of the guests we're going to have on next week is also a biblical scholar, if you will, who's also into language. And language is and how it's translated and how it ends up in different translations and how we end up with it today. And how like the littlest mark or the littlest the way a line is drawn or something can throw off a whole word or a meaning of a word, which gets interpreted differently. And so I find that the I think that's cool. That's the best way I can describe it. That's cool. It's cool that you. We have a question from chat.
Yes, we have a question for you from the chat room, and this comes from Sudan. How familiar are you with the geography of the local interstellar neighborhood, as far as the sun and its neighbors are fairly isolated, and a gap between the stars, sort of like a South Sea island like Tahiti, but in space?
I have to say I'm not well educated as far as the universe and the layout, unfortunately.
Right. He is a theologian, not an astronomer,
right.
per se.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know if Sudan was aware.
No, he just got here.
Right. He just. How you doing, Sudan? Good to see you. Always good to see you. Okay, so why don't we? Is there anything else before we move on regarding
these experiences?
These experiences that you'd like to share with people.
Just real quick, something that I think is important to kind of convey, like I just said, is the emotion. Now, if you listen to my clients, I'm always telling them, get out of emotion, because emotions are changing, especially when you make a decision. I'm always like, get out of an emotion and kind of think rationally for a second before you do something. But emotions do play a part, but I think they are very important in these, in these experiences and just spiritually, how, and this is a very Catholic thing, it's that the inner shines through the outer. And if I am called to be a being of love, then I will radiate that out through this physical shell. And those around me should, in some sense, feel that, especially, I mean, you read accounts of saints of different faiths and how they almost seem to radiate a light because of, to me, of this divine emotion and spark inside of them. I've had people before tell me that have just met me. In fact, when I was in college, I was introduced to a young lady, and within a matter of seconds, she's like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so calm around you." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's weird, but nice to meet you." You know, it's just very important, like I said, to convey that even with the writing, that we get so cut and divided. We have so many different forces trying to divide us as human beings in today's world, that I think it's important to remember ourselves as emotional, spiritual beings and rise above, you know, these physical, cultural, whatever differences, and just go back to the center. To me, that means returning to the primary love, compassion, mercy, joy, all of those basic spiritual traits that human beings have talked about for millennia. And so anyway, that was my last word about all of that. I just wanted to convey the sense of the importance of the emotion in these experiences.
That was very well said.
That was.
I thought.
That was.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So, back to religion. I guess there is one thing we wanted to get your opinion on.
Okay.
And that was concerning, we know you're not the spokesman for the Catholic Church, obviously, but you are Catholic.
Right.
And being a theologian, I know every theologian I would assume would have an opinion on this.
Right.
And that would be regarding the Vatican's decision or choice to teach other denominations, primarily Christian, their brand of deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
Which, have you heard that? I know that was recently in the news. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on the idea of the the Roman Catholic Church opening up their doors to other faith bases to come in, it would be a two-part. One is like through the deliverance, they would be teaching them.
Right. This is coming from the Vatican.
Right.
Okay, I'm on board with you now. Yeah, with the Association of Exorcists class that they have there in Rome, and inviting the different denominations. You know, I read a little bit about it. I think in one sense it's a good thing, because not only on because I think on different levels about different things. I think on one level that it is to kind of reach across once again these divisions and say, okay, you know, we're united kind of in a common fight here. You know, we shouldn't be fighting with each other. We shouldn't be, you know, unfriending each other on Facebook over ridiculous stuff. Let's kind of get over these differences, and the differences will still be there. But let's remember what does unite us. Let's reach across, and go that in that way. On a different level, I think, you know, personally as a Catholic growing up in Southwest Missouri, there are a lot of odd ideas about what Catholics believe, and so on a different sense, I think it would be a good opportunity, in a way, to say this is what we really believe about this, you know, because there's so many different rumors. I'm in 8th grade, my 8th grade Spanish class. A girl turned around, she's like, "Now, why do you Catholics use snakes in your service?" I was like, "Well, for one we don't." me not being a snake lover, I wouldn't be in part of that church.
Right.
And I kind of use it as an opportunity to kind of explain for a minute, you know, what we actually believed. And so yeah, I think from what I read, I think it's a good thing. So
I know some people had the other part of that was that recently the Pope let Islam in, and they did prayers together, like in both faiths.
Yeah.
And that's the first time that the Vatican has ever invited an outside faith to come in, and not only come in like that, but to then, like, well, you know, do a service in our house, you know. And so the fear becomes, we don't want our dogma messed with, or we don't want our certain beliefs, you know, tainted in a sense. But I think, and I could see where that would be a concern, but I think overall, Well, I mean that's the Vatican's choice if they want,
Right.
And I could see the argument on both sides of that. As far as teaching deliverance and being spiritual warfare, I think that's just a great thing, because the Catholics do have the most experience in dealing with exorcism.
Yes.
And
right.
I know. Let's see. I know that.
And,
go ahead.
And people kind of look at it as, kind of a new thing, but, even John Paul II, when he was Pope, it was an annual prayer meeting with leaders of all different world faiths in Assisi, Italy, every year. So for the Pope and the Vatican to officially be praying with Buddhists, they had the Dalai Lama, they had the Grand Islamic leader, they had all these different denominations and faith groups from around the world praying all together, praying as one. And I know, some people are like, well, it's the one world religion. I just want to say, stop it. Stop. There is nothing wrong, I think, to come together finally to stop the bickering, stop the finger pointing, and actually come before and say, Lord, here, all your children are here together in front of you. So.
Okay, so we are, I think it's time for another break.
We have 2 minutes until our next break.
We have 2 minutes?
Yeah, we have 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well then, really quick, one of the questions was, what's your favorite book in the Bible and why?
Ooh, good question.
Whoa, that's kind of deep.
I know. You got 30 seconds. Go. No. We can come back to that too if you want, or whatever.
Yeah, give me a minute on that one.
All right. So then, why don't we take our commercial break now? You are listening to Paraversal Universe. It is time. We'll be right back with our guest for the next segment.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Alrighty, we're back, everyone. This is Paraversal Universe, produced by WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET-FM, High Point Radio, and the Rift Radio Network. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malik, and we are glad you are with us as always. Dr. Chuck Kennedy will now be playing classic Paraversal Universe episodes once a week on the radio network PSI Radio, with a focus on our episodes that have academic influence in the paranormal community or paranormal influence in the academic community. Any way you slice it. We'll bring you more on that in the near future. PSI Radio will also be playing our producer Kat Hobson's show, Paranormal Experienced, as well, which is a high-caliber show with awesome guests. So if you're listening to our shows, know that those networks we mentioned are committed to highlighting excellence in the paranormal and fringe community. Okay. This segment is brought to you by the 5-star Reader's Choice Award-winning epic fantasy trilogy, Helm. That's Helm by Robert L. Malik. And back to the show. This is Paraversal Universe, and we are speaking with theologian Christopher Sampson. Are you still with us, Chris?
Yes, I'm here.
So during the commercial break, we received another question for you from the chat room. Regarding the purification of the soul as seen in Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross, how does this relate to the concept of enlightenment and paying back karma as seen in the journey of the soul through many lives?
Well, that is, someone's been doing their homework. I've once again, I've tried to read St. John. I know I've read bits and pieces of the Dark Night of the Soul. And I know he talks about the purification, kind of being a process. And from what I've read and from what I do understand, which is not a lot, but what I have understood is that, he talks about the soul kind of being purified, but it's constantly being pulled towards the point of origin, which is God. And because of this, it goes through these periods of darkness and dryness and, in a sense, spiritual discomfort. But in the journey towards the center, it kind of on the process, it realizes it is being purified. It is being made more whole than when it began the journey. So, in the sense, if we're talking about kind of progression of lives and things like that, to me right now at this moment of time, I think kind of perspective. I mean, if you're going through a progression of lives, then you can look at one life and say, by that kind of logic, is this life going to be kind of my dark night, or is it going to be kind of where I'm kind of at a point of purification? Am I, just kind of what is that? So I'm afraid I'm not quite answering it, but from my limited perspective and understanding, that's what I would say. I do have a response as far as my favorite book. I've got, it would be the first letter of John.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Mine is Ecclesiastes, or the Wisdom of Sirach.
Uh-huh.
Mine is Psalms.
Cool.
Yes, I love the Psalms. In fact, I'm currently undergoing a new translation, an alternative translation of all the Psalms from the Hebrew.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So let me get back to where I'm supposed to be here quick. Okay. No, I know one of the questions I had jotted down is in regards to what we're talking about now. And that is, are there any ancient texts besides the 66 books in the canon which you find fascinating?
Well, of course, for us, we've got the 75 in our official canon.
Okay.
And,
That's right. Catholics got a large.
Yeah.
Right.
My mistake.
And no, that's fine. Out of those, let me see if I can find it real quick, because surprise, surprise, I actually have one near me. But there is, trying to find it. Oh, the Book of Wisdom, which would be apocryphal / deuterocanonical book that we would have. But in it, it begins, its opening chapter talks about how it says God did not make death, which to me is such a powerful thing. You know, when we look at, I use that and think of that when I look and hear about all these horrible things that people do to each other. And I think, everyone wants to blame God. Well, why did God allow this? Well, God did not make death. He doesn't make evil. And yes, he will allow certain things to happen, people to hurt others or all that. But, if you're a person that believes God is all good, then if he allowed something like that to happen that we would call evil, then in his own purpose, it's not going to end at the evil, it's going to end in good. And so, to answer your question, because I tend to be wordy and my wife is always telling me, make your answer short. So, to kind of answer your question, it would be the Book of Wisdom.
Yeah, and that's why I like the Book of Sirach, because it's one of the wisdom books.
Right.
And it's actually written by 3 generations of men, the Sirach family. And I also love Solomon's work, the Wisdom of Solomon, and of course Proverbs.
Yeah.
Of course, Solomon is also an example of a man who went astray. But when he wrote the wisdom books, he was what I would guess to be at the height or the pinnacle of. I mean, I believe he always had the wisdom. It was just a matter of practicing it, and I think in the end, some of that slipped, and we know it did because his the women convinced him, to, let's say, notice deities, if you will.
Right.
So, and I think that was the beginning of, but be that as it may, no, Solomon wasn't perfect, or nor did he ever claim, and, but wisdom is, right? And I also agree that God creates things to exist, and he doesn't create things. I mean, that would go against the nature of his very being. So, and which I think that is fascinating, because that opens up all kinds of possibilities. Certainly life after death, perhaps reincarnation, all kinds of things. I mean, possibilities, but just the fact that why, like our spirit, our being, if that's the case, then, like for instance, the average lifespan is 100 or 70 years, I think, or something. 50 to 70 years people live on average, right? So, that's such a, that's like not even one grain of sand in a huge beach. Why would we only exist for that? I think that there would be more to that. So that I do think we are, like you said, we're spiritual beings having a human existence, not human beings having a spiritual experience.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay, we are getting close to the end here. Let's see. One last quick question. Some people liken some of the biblical experiences with UFOs, like the minor prophets, for example. What are your thoughts on that?
Here I give an answer kind of as a language geek. The word Elohim is such a problematic word because in English people say, well, it's God. It's God. Well, no, it's a plural. It means it can be translated as gods, but when you take it back to its core, it means like a force or a power. So here we're talking about powers. And when we talk about the B'nai Elohim, the children of the Elohim, the children of the powers, who sang for joy at creation. And in one of the Psalms, God tells the Sod Elohim, the council, the divine council, you're all mortal. And here's your, kind of time frame, all of you're going to die. I think that, when we look at the actual language, and as we said earlier, language is so important. Words are so important. That's why I look into all of those and try to push those back as far as I can. When we look at that, not saying that, most of the stuff is directly spiritual, but then the Hebrew leaves open these possibilities to be interpreted in a more organic visitation experience sense. So English, to me, the more I learn about other languages, the more limited I think English becomes for me, because the original Hebrew is so much more descriptive, and it actually will point towards not just how one translator has put it, but it actually includes the possibility for these other things. So that's my answer.
That was very eloquent.
That was.
I like that. Because, yeah. So we've come to the point. We are at the closing end part of the show. Is there, first of all, let me thank you. Let us thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. We appreciate it, and we know our listeners did as well.
Well, it was fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Is there, if anybody wants to find you, how would they find you?
Good question. Right now, since I'm just a Joe Schmo, I am on Facebook. If anyone wants to message me through there.
Perfect.
Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, that's perfect. And you're very humble.
Yes.
By the way.
Well, thank you.
Welcome. You are. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us that many people may not share.
Right. And your wisdom.
And and the divine wisdom that you shared with us from the Word of God. You are always a friend of Paraversal Universe.
Thank you.
Welcome. We'd like to thank our guest, Theologian Christopher Sampson, for being such an informative and awesome guest. Next Friday, we will talk with geopolitical analysts Evelyn Pringle, Angel Strong, and Jean Breda for a roundtable concerning conspiracies about our healthcare system. So don't miss that.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, we'll get into some conspiracies and some mysteries. So feel free to support any of the networks mentioned here tonight, as well as the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited, 501c3 nonprofit organization, by donating. It's folks like you who ensure those excellent organizations will be here tomorrow. To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming.
And to the skeptic, there will never be enough.
Thank you. Good night. God bless you. Everyone have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you here next time.
Right. Good night, everyone.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.